from Woodland, California, and I asked him to send me a bio, and he sent me what he called a short bio, and it was about 450 words. So, but he
Go ahead and cut it down.
I'm going to read you some highlights because it really is fascinating and impressive. He told us, for those of you who weren't on the call the first few minutes, I knew that he had just come back yesterday from out of town. I said, "Where'd you go?" He said he was in San Diego, because right now he's near Sacramento, where he lives. And I said, "What were you doing?" He said he did a big day. They set a national record for a single county, 229 birds. A big day. The last record was 217. John started birding at age 11. He's been birding for about 50 years. He was one of the first dozen teenage birders to see over 600 species in North America. You must have had very indulgent parents.
Yeah.
And supportive. He's been a professional ornithologist since 1982. He's done field work for the Smithsonian, Arizona State University, U.S. Forest Service, and many other places. He's had assignments in Mexico, Costa Rica, Ecuador, and Peru. He's worked as an environmental consultant, which he still does. He's one of the leading authorities on California bird distribution status and natural history. He is currently ranked number 2 with an average of 278 species in each of the state's 58 counties, with 4 counties over 400 species. And he's one of fewer than 10 people with a state list of over 600 species. He was the original eBird editor for all of Northern California. He has a bunch of stuff like that, a mile long. Leads international birding tours to Africa and South America through his company, Sterling Birds. He has birded in 31 countries so far, and he has discovered and documented the first California records of birds I never even heard of: Oriental greenfinch, taiga flycatcher, falcated duck, eastern winter wren, European whimbrel, and several first country records in Peru and Ecuador, along with South America's first Eurasian curlew in coastal Argentina. If that's not enough, I don't know what is. So welcome, John. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. Let me share my screen here.
I'm muting myself now.
Okay.
And again, remember, you can put questions in the chat.
Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me. San Diego is the greatest birding county, and I will explain why. Here it is in the far south, right on the Mexican border. And you can see Anza Borrego State Park, which is this large area in the east side. A lot of open areas, all very dry desert. And then these national forests, Cleveland National Forest, fairly large areas. Not all of it is montane forest. A lot of it's montane scrublands, chaparral. But there are some good areas of forest. And up on the left-hand corner is Camp Pendleton Marine Corps Base, another huge, large area that's not really open to birders very much, unless you know an officer on the camp, and some of them are birders. San Diego itself is the city is fairly large. There's a lot of urban development scattered along the west side of the county, and here's a map. Here's a aerial photo showing Tijuana on the south side in Mexico, and then up the whole San Diego Bay area, Point Loma and La Jolla, and just gorgeous area. There's a lot of parks within the city limits, and there's a lot of ornamental trees planted in people's yards. So there's a lot of quite a good habitat, even though it is urban and suburban areas. There was a cedar fire that was 2003. 450 square miles were burned, 10% of the county, including 3,000 homes. Largest wildfire in California history. Pretty amazing. Here is an aerial view of it. And it just raged on for a long time. Since then, there's been a number of fires. Last year, we had a lot of fires up in the mountains, burned a lot of coniferous forests. But I'll show some photographs of that later. When you go to San Diego, there's plenty of things to use to prepare for your trip. One is the San Diego County Bird Atlas, which is a pretty hefty book. It's just one of the better bird books of its kind anywhere in the country. And it's just chock full of information, has breeding bird atlas, wintering bird atlas, and all the records of each species, and a lot of biogeographic information, etc. So if you want to really delve into San Diego County, you can purchase this book. There's also the San Diego Field Ornithologists, and they have monthly meetings and field trips you can join. It's fairly inexpensive to join. You can go on their field trips for free if you time your trip with their field trips. They do quite a few, and a lot of good information there. Really nice people. They're very happy to answer questions, etc. There's also the San Diego Audubon has the Bird Festival each year. Next year it's going to be February 16th to 20th. It's a great way to get to know San Diego. Lots of field trips all over to different habitats, every corner of the county. And even though it's still winter, there's a lot of birds there, a lot of species. So it's pretty fun. So here are the birding stats. There are 520 species have been recorded. Guy McCaskill himself has seen over 500, and he's the dean of California birding and San Diego birding. The big year record is 393. And as Rena just mentioned, we just set the new big day record at 229, which is a big day record for any county in the United States. So it was quite an amazing place to bird. The Christmas counts get over 200 every year. It's always in the top 5 in the country. And there's just excellent birding all year round. Spring migration, summer, fall migration, and winter. We have a Mediterranean climate, which keeps things fairly nice. We don't get any harsh winters, although you go up in the mountains and there's snow. So the joke is we can drive to any climate we want. If we want to go to the winter, we can drive to the winter. And some of the factors for the bird diversity is the habitat diversity. It does stretch from the Pacific into the sort of Mediterranean scrublands, riparian areas, montane, coniferous forests, and then down to the lowest lowland deserts. We do have pelagic birding trips often through San Diego Field Ornithologists. So if you're interested on a pelagic birding boat, highly recommend. It's a good thing to do. The seas are fairly calm off San Diego because the influence of the coastal the Channel Islands. There's quite a few islands off the coast, fairly large islands that keep the seas fairly calm. We don't have a lot of deep water. There's a huge active birding community with lots of experts, so they're finding rare birds all the time. And there are vagrant traps we do get the occasional northern Mexican and Arizona species. We do get quite a few eastern United States species, a few occasional Siberian species, pelagic species from South Pacific and all kinds of weird places and from the ocean. And then we do get a few northern species that come sometimes as far south as San Diego. There's one year there was a common redpoll, which is super rare anywhere in California, even the farthest northern part of California. And there's one coming to a bird feeder in the mountains in San Diego. So pretty amazing. So I kind of mentioned the habitat diversity, the ocean, a lot of really nice coastal estuaries, marshes, lagoons. San Diego Bay itself is amazing. There's a lot of ornamental gardens and parks. There's coastal sage scrub, riparian woodland, different types of chaparral, oak woodland, montane forest scrub. Okay. This kind of shows kind of in the middle, this dark green, that's where the forest is or was. Some of these large areas that were burned in the last few years. So the area of coniferous forest is much reduced. Way over here on the right, you have super dry desert. And then most of all that yellow and that red is basically a sage or chaparral shrubland. So much of the area is just shrubland. There are some grasslands, and then a lot of urban areas, which is this brown on the west side. So quite a bit of suburban areas. This is a famous spot. There's a little stint that's been wintering for the last 4 years. It's a Siberian species, or actually European species. And these are coastal salt ponds just south of San Diego Bay. And there's full of birds right now, lots of terns and etc. This is the San Diego River mouth. And just to the north is Mission Bay, and to the south is San Diego Bay. And wonderful birding place. Right now, there's a reddish egret, a tricolored heron, little blue heron, a flock of 5,000 elegant terns, and hundreds of skimmers, black skimmers, and lots of other really, really amazing birds. Here's another area of the bay. And you can see it's springtime in California, lots of flowers out. This is when you get up in the mountains, and you got this montane scrubland, and with these small oak patches. There's an area where there was a recent fire came through, burned all the oak trees. This is what most of the coniferous forest looks like. Fairly open, large ponderosa pines, a lot of grass underneath. And full of montane species, mountain chickadees, etc. And here's another view of the, because this is most of San Diego County is basically an area that ecologically is adapted to fire. And because of fire suppression over the decades, a lot of fuels build up. So when we do have fires now, they're massive, and they tend to take a lot of the trees down. So that's what it looks like. And here's the lowest part of the desert. Right now we're in a drought, so there are no flowers. Some years this is full of wildflowers at this time of year, but there's been almost no rain this last winter. And let's get to the birds. "522 bird species seen in San Diego County." Huh, I didn't actually, okay, here we go. And here's just kind of a group of a bunch of rare birds that have shown up, but a lot of these are Eastern, so I'm not going to bore you with those. And I'll talk about mostly the birds that people from outside of California come to see, come to San Diego for. And this is, I'm going to start with pelagic birds. I'm going to go from here and work my way inland. These are all eBird points from all the pelagic trips where people have been collecting eBird checklists. So you can see there's a lot of boats have been out, and a lot of people have been checking off birds. And so there's a lot known about the pelagics out of here. One of the groups that people come here for are the murrelets. There are 3 species that are rare anywhere else in the United States. Scripses, which breeds locally in some of the Channel Islands, so they're here in the spring through the fall. Guadalupe and creveres, they nest only in a few islands off Baja California, and so they only come up after they finish breeding in the fall. And then once winter hits, they usually head back south to Mexico. So let me just go through these really quickly. This is the Scripsis murrelet. It used to be called Xanthus, but it was split recently into Scripsis and Guadalupe. And you can see black all over the eye, fairly short little bill and short little tail. And they're often in little pairs. Even in the fall, the pairs will stay together. And here's the best shot we can get of the Guadalupe, you can see that little bit of white coming up over the eye. And this is a bird that lots of people really want to see. And when we get El Ninos and a lot of warm water coming up from Mexico, we can get the creveres, which is much longer bill and a little bit longer tail. And you can see that little collar right here, and they have dark underwings. So those are always fancy birds that people come to see. And also in fall is the best time for a red-billed tropic bird. We don't get them every trip, but it's your best chance to see them on the West Coast, at least, is to come to San Diego in late August into mid-October and go on a pelagic trip. It's a spectacular adult. Another group that people come for are the storm petrels, and these are mostly you need to come in, it's August through mid-October to come to see the storm petrels on the ocean. And this was a rare one, the Tristums or Townsends, and they got a little short tail and a little white rump. And here it is on the right, and really short tail. And this is recently split from the much larger, longer-tailed Leach's storm petrel. So this is a bird that all of a sudden it's a new species, and this is pretty much the only good place to see it if you want to put it on your United States list. On the left is a least storm petrel, on the right is the black. These are the smallest, and the least is the smallest, and the black is the largest. And they're often in huge groups of sometimes several hundred in a flock. And again, only in the fall. Once you get to the coast, birds that are pretty neat for people, special for non-West Coast people, are the Brandt's cormorants, and they nest right on the coastline in La Jolla and Sunset Cliffs and some of the other places right on the immediate coast. And this is a pair in display. They're doing all this display in late February, March is when they start. So if you come to the bird festival, you'll see these in their full glory. This is a ashy storm petrel. I forgot to mention this. This is one of the rarest birds around. They only nest in a couple of little islands in the Channel Islands and southeast Farallon Island off of San Francisco, and that's it in the entire planet. And so they are found off the coast of San Diego to sometimes as far north as Mendocino County, and maybe a little bit further north as well. But this is a good place to see them. Other birds to look for right on the immediate coast are elegant terns. And for a long time, they only nested on one island in the Gulf of California and off Baja California. And in recent years, with all these warm water years and extreme El Nino events, we're starting to find more and more of them coming to California and actually coming in the springtime and nesting. So these big nesting colonies have kind of shifted northwards. And so you can sometimes see, thousands of birds, and they're nesting as far north as Monterey now, which is quite unexpected, nothing that anyone predicted 20 years ago. And here's an elegant tern on the left and a much larger royal tern on the right. And royal tern is a widespread species found on both coasts, East Coast and West Coast, etc. So you can see the difference there. Another special birds that we have on the Rocky coastline for people who have not been to the West Coast are black turnstones, wandering tattler. We also have surf birds and black oyster catchers. And you can see them on the rocky shorelines and the rocky jetties along the edges of the bays. The California brown pelican, which is surely a different species from the Atlantic subspecies, and they're this bright pink and purplish face and gullet, and quite strikingly different from the Atlantic population. Of course, they don't interbreed because they're widely separated, and they really should be different species. And they're quite common, actually abundant on the coast. Another bird that's pretty neat that's formerly nested strictly off Baja California is the hairbin's gull. And now we have them nesting in small colonies as north as San Francisco Bay, and quite different and distinct from any other gull. And it's a very, very beautiful bird. This is an endangered species that a lot of people really want to see when they come to the West Coast. And San Diego Bay and the Tijuana River estuary right on the Mexican border is probably the best place to see, or one of the best places to see this species. They're not like a lot of other whales. They don't really hide that much. They'll hide a bit, but you can often see them foraging along the shoreline, edges of sloughs. California gnatcatcher is another endangered species that's hanging on to the coastal sage scrub habitat right along the coastline and a little bit inland, not too far inland. But they were split from the black-tailed gnatcatcher, which is out in the desert. Bell sparrow, another coastal sage species that people want to see. And California thrashers are very common, even in some of the residential areas and parks. See them out in the open. And wren tits. For a long time, wren tit was in its own family. Now it's thought to be in the babbler family, which is a old world family of birds, and the only member of that family in the Western Hemisphere is the wren tit. And it's also a chaparral species as well, coastal sage scrub. And the wonderful black-chinned sparrow. You have to get a little higher in elevation, get up into the montane scrubland, and we had black-chinned sparrows. They only come to nest, so they arrive in late March and depart by August. Bell's vireo, they're found in the riparian areas, and along with Lagulet buntings. Spectacular bird. And we have lots of hooded orioles in the riparian and also in the residential areas. They like to nest in the fan palms. We have native fan palms, Washington fan palms, but there's a lot of non-native fan palms as well, and they'll nest equally in both. Of course, we have in some of the higher elevation shrublands and in the oak forests, and even into some of the conifer forests, we have black-headed grosbeaks are fairly common. Again, only found in the summertime. And Allen's hummingbird, a pretty special bird. They're only found on the coastal strip of Southern California and or California in general. And this subspecies is actually stays in Southern California all year round. It's a year-round resident. And it's different from the Rufous hummingbird, but because it has a green back. You can see. We also get lots of Lawrence's goldfinches scattered around the chaparral, scrubland area, and also in the riparian, and mostly in the summertime. We occasionally get them in the winter. Another spectacular bird. Sometimes it's when I take clients out on guiding people from outside of California, this is often their favorite bird. And when you get out into the desert area, drier areas, we get black-throated sparrow. We get a lot of kind of Arizona birds coming through, which adds to the diversity. LeConte's thrasher as well. Verdin, phainopeplas, and even vermilion flycatchers. And vermilion flycatchers have colonized California in recent decades, and now they're they used to be only out in the desert, and now they're working their way north and also towards the coast. And now, just in the last few years, we're getting quite a population of vermilion flycatchers wintering, and some of them actually nesting um, right on the coast, San Diego and Los Angeles. We do get lots of western tanders in migration, and they're also breed up in the coniferous forests. And Plumius vireos and Cassins vireos migrate through. Often there'll be some Plumius vireos that will winter right in San Diego proper. And one of my favorite calls is the song of the canyon wren, and there's a lot of rocky canyon areas in the county, and they're full of canyon wrens and rock wrens as well. You get up into the coniferous forest, and you get the pygmy nuthatches in the pine trees. There are also hairy woodpeckers. There used to be white-headed woodpeckers in most of the mountains, but with the severe fires in recent decades, they've been pretty much wiped out, and they're now only found on one mountain, Mount Palomar, in the far north, which is a little bit kind of an isolated mountain. We also get the violet green swallows that are a mountain breeder. They'll nest in woodpecker holes and in cavities made by woodpeckers. Very, very common in the mountains. Along with purple martins. Purple martins are very common in the east, but in the west coast, they're fairly rare. They've been wiped out by Eurasian starlings that compete for their nest sites. Purple martins do not nest in martin houses in the west. They don't do that. They won't do that. People put up martin houses and they won't nest there. So they're really hit hard. But there's a few places in San Diego County where you can find them. Steller's jays are pretty typical. We do get Cassins finches on occasion. This year's a record year for Cassins finches in the mountains. Sometimes in the wintertime, we get Williamson sapsuckers that are migrant from the Rocky Mountains or the Sierras that come down this far. Even occasionally Clark's nutcrackers and pinion jays from much further north. So it's pretty interesting. California scrub jay was split from the western scrub jay a few years ago, and it's a very common bird from the coastline all the way up in the mountains, mostly on the west side of the mountain ranges. They don't go out into the desert at all, but very common yard bird for people. And acorn woodpeckers, which are they nest they're semi-colonial. They're very social. Relatives will all stay together. They'll have lots of pairs breeding in one area, and they'll share this granary where they'll have one tree or a telephone pole, and they'll drill holes that are perfect size to store an acorn. And they'll all store acorns in the same tree, and they'll use it together communally. Just fascinating bird. They also make really good pets. I know researchers who've actually had them as pets because they're social. They'll bond with humans, where most other birds are not social, so they will not bond with you. Northern raven's another bird that makes a good pet. They're illegal to have as pets. You have to have a permit. So, anyways, are there any questions? There's a lot of. I didn't want to go through all 500 species of birds because it would just take forever. In the Anza Borrego Desert, there are some. It's a place called Borrego Springs, which is a community area within it, it's surrounded by the state park. And there are some golf courses, ponds, a lot of ornamental trees, and that's a really great area for birding the desert there, especially in migration. Like it's loaded with migrants. The Anza Borrego wastewater treatment plant has the only mesquite patch left in the whole desert area there. It's been shrinking because of the aquifer has been lowered by people using the water, basically mining with wells. And so the native mesquite habitat has been shrinking. There used to be Lucy's warblers nesting there, but they're gone now. And the number of crystal thrashers and verdins, black-tailed gnatcatchers, and other desert species of the population has dwindled dramatically over the years because of the habitat loss.
So John, we do have a few questions. For some reason, oh, wait a minute, I kind of screwed up my screen, but so let me give you a few. First, I'm going to do a personal observation, which is I happen to have a first cousin who lives in La Jolla, right across from where the Brandt's cormorants nest.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell everybody here, you can literally walk on the sidewalk, look down over this ledge, and you will see dozens and dozens of Brandt's cormorants, and they only have the blue throat in nesting when they're breeding, correct?
Correct.
Right. And yes. And I'm glad you said this because I had to identify it myself. I saw a wandering tattler there. So,
yeah, La Jolla is a really good place for sea watching. If you don't want to go on a boat, it's rare to get seasick off of San Diego because it's usually just almost like glass. It's usually really calm out there. But you can, if you have a scope, you can do a sea watch from La Jolla. And brown boobies are often found off there. Black-finned shearwaters in the wintertime are common. You can get Jaegers flying through any time of year, chasing terns. One of the rarest birds in California was a great-winged petrel, which is a southern and almost an Antarctic species. It gets a little bit further, it gets in a little north of the Arctic Ocean, but the very southern oceans. And one was found and photographed coming right around the La Jolla Point, really close. So you never know what you're going to find there. Sometimes you can even see an albatross, a lacing albatross or a black-footed albatross. It's
when
really
I was
good.
there, I didn't have a scope, and you need a scope, but I did see. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I do have a bunch of questions here.
Sure.
I guess I'll start from the top. Is the vermilion flycatcher displacing other species as it spreads its territory, or are you seeing this kind of displacement among other species? I'm not sure what that means.
No, it's not really competing with any other species. The other birds that are similar to it that nest in the same habitat are Cassin's kingbirds. There's lots of Cassin's kingbirds. Western kingbirds in the summertime, Say's phoebes as well, and they all coexist fairly well. None of them really need to compete for nest sites because they have a little open cup nest on a branch, so it's not like they're competing for a woodpecker hole. So they're very benign colonizer.
And a beautiful bird.
Yeah, absolutely gorgeous.
What are 4 or 5 favorite locations that would maximize species, non-pelagic locations? And I have a similar question, which is, I think it was provide a list of good birding sites. So I guess that's the same question.
Sure. There are a ton of them. The Tijuana River Valley. There's a number of parks there. One's called the Birds and Butterfly Garden. And it's right near a community garden, kind of vegetable garden, community garden area. And both of those are really good. The Tijuana River goes right between the two spots. There are trails and stuff at the Bird and Butterfly Garden. And there's a visitor center at the Tijuana River Estuary, really nice visitor center. And there's trails, boardwalk that goes out into the marsh. So it's a great way to see the rails and egrets and herons. La Jolla Cove is good. A famous place, if you want to look for rare birds in fall migration, is Point Loma. The very end of Point Loma is the Cabrillo National Monument, and that's really good. But before that, you go through the Fort Rosencrantz military cemetery, and the cemetery is actually excellent. That's where a lot of the rarest birds are found. But that's fall migration. I've seen little bunting there from Siberia. Yellow-green vireos there almost every fall, which is a Mexican species or tropical species that comes north occasionally. There are a number of lagoons further north. There's San Alejo Lagoon, which also has a nature center there on the north side of the lagoon, right at the coast. And that's a good place to visit. There are California gnatcatchers right next to the visitor center. They planted native plants there. And there's a little riparian spot too. So it's a really good place for land birds as well as water birds. The Laguna Mountains, which are nice. There are campgrounds up there. Good birding. Cuyamaca Lake, which is a high elevation lake, is really good birding as well. There are the Anza Borrego State Park. There's a number of places to go out if you want to look for desert birds.
In other words, you have to come for a month.
You can see everything in a day if you do a big go crazy from midnight to midnight. But no,
Okay.
it's you can spend a week and just go to a new places every day and not get tired of it.
Okay.
There's another place called Mission Trails, which is a really nice area. It's a little bit inland. It's a beautiful riparian area, grassland, and it's also a park. Really nice. There's a visitor center there, and really nice park trails. And there's a little lake with marsh around it and stuff. And that's a really good place to go to.
I have a conservation question, but the first one was, before I do that, what are the one or two best sites to view from in La Jolla?
The children's pool area is good, but also right at the kind of the north part. There's a little park there. Right now it's a big half of it's a big construction site. They're doing something. I don't know, it's all fenced off, but there's a little park. You probably know where it is. I can't remember the name of it, but there's some benches there. There's a little building, and it's kind of
along the water.
Right along the water.
Yeah.
Right along the water.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Then I have a question here. What efforts are being made to preserve the aquifer and the desert habitat, and are those showing any success?
I haven't heard of any efforts, and nothing is showing any success because it's just degrading before our eyes. Yeah, it's a common problem in the deserts in the Southwest. Yes.
What was, if you could pick only one month to visit, which month for birds?
Me personally, I would pick early October because you got pelagic birding, you got a lot of rarities showing up. It's great for shorebirds. All the resident birds are still there. You got a lot of migration as well. But April is a great time, late April, early May, because everything's singing and preparing to breed. And so if you want to see Western birds, if you're not from California, that's probably the best time, springtime.
I
But
have, by the way,
winter is great too. And you know, you're going to see a
anyone.
lot of birds anytime,
I
really.
think it also depends on whether you know your Western birds, you know, if you know.
Yeah, it depends on what you want to see. The weather is almost always nice. You know, you do get some fog in the mornings on the coast, immediate coast, at certain times of year. And, you know, sometimes you get rain, which is always a surprise. But
I've gotten a text already, like, when are we going? So this is a question really from Sunny and me, which I'll just ask because there's a funny story behind it if you know the guy. So you're from the Sacramento area. Do you know Bill Yates?
Bill Yates.
Yeates?
The name rings a bell, but I don't know him.
Okay. He actually introduced Sunny and me to birding about 44 years ago.
Oh, excellent.
He and his wife took us to Point Pelee. Our very first birding experience was spring at Point Pelee. So it's pretty amazing. Anybody else have any questions for John? If not, we'll let him go. It's been a pleasure. And by the way, he said that he put this presentation together strictly for us because he's usually talking to people who bird in California, who know California. So hopefully, John, you'll be able to give it again because it was wonderful. And I know some of those birds, certainly not all, but since we live in Chicago, I always would want to see them again anyway. So I thank Sunny if you want to unmute everybody and so we can all say thank you, and we really appreciate it. And I know all of us are ready to get on a plane when we can. Most of us, I think many of us are vaccinated, and we're ready to go somewhere already.
One thing I should mention is that during shorebird migration, you have huge numbers of shorebirds in some of the areas too. I mean, just thousands and thousands. That's something I didn't really mention.
And that's October?
No, April, May, into mostly April, March, April, and then from July through October. And there's a lot of wintering shorebirds too.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Well, anybody else want to say anything specific? Otherwise, we'll just say thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And John, I'll be back in touch.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you'll have some people ready to book their trips.
Okay. All right.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye-bye.
Good night.
You're muted.
I'm muted. I'll try it again. I just want to say that anybody who wants to hang on, if you have any chit chat, here comes Rena.
And I signed off.
Oh, Rena signed off.
Oops. Chuck Berman, it's so nice to see you again 2 days
Nice to
later.
see you too. All right, I'll get my. There I am.
Hi.
No.
Hi.
Yep.
So when are we going?
I have relatives.
Well, that's a good reason.
So you got a place to stay.
I do. I do.
Yeah, well, I had, like I said, my cousin lives right across. She bought a condo there, and the Brandt's cormorants are really quite a sight to see in breeding plumage. So.
I love the area.
Rena's disembodied head.
Oh well. Oh yeah. Oh dear. Well, okay. Automatically signed off. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and thanks for joining us. I know we're all ready to get out of Dodge.
Hey, Rena, I do have one question, which I was going to ask him. When you go somewhere, and I've had this issue before, how to find a guide if you want a local guide.
Yeah.
I've gone through a local Audubon when I was in South Carolina, and it was wonderful because their former president just said, I'll take you around. I gave a donation to it, but is there an easy way to?
I was in actually he's from Sacramento. I had a business meeting up in Sacramento, and I contacted Birding Buddy. I think it's Birding
Oh,
Buddy.
yeah.
Birding Pal.
Birding Pale or something like that, and indicated what I was looking for, and somebody responded. I met a nice guy, and he took me around all day. I mean, he really did a number with me, and it was just a great experience.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. I did that in LA one year, and I think we've done it somewhere else. But I mean, you're doing the right thing. I mean, I think the Audubon societies are the best place.
At least to start, they can tell you,
Yeah, so.
connect you.
Yeah, because, yeah. Okay.
You know, we got the same thing. I mean, people contact us coming into this area and looking for somebody to take them around or something like that.
Yeah.
And
That's cool.
sometimes we have.
The best story is when a father and son from Scotland,
Ireland.
Ireland were coming to, they had a layover at O'Hare, and they were on their way to a birding festival in Arizona, and they wanted to bird at Montrose.
On May 15th. On May 15th.
So
Oh,
Sonny
wow.
and Jeff Sanders met them halfway and took them. There weren't very many birds that day, but they were happy to see a cardinal.
Yeah.
You know?
We picked them up at the Blue Line and drove down Montrose to the lake.
So,
Perfect.
Although it was a crappy birding day, but they, you know, when they saw a cardinal, they grabbed each other and went like, "Oh my God, a cardinal!"
my favorite expression about that is one person's backyard bird is someone else's exotic bird, right?
Yeah.
So Chuck was on our trip this weekend where we saw the Vesper sparrow. So that's always fun. It's not an easy
It was
bird.
gorgeous.
Very good bird. So
Was it singing?
it was not.
Okay.
It was not.
Do they breathe
But it-
there? Do they breathe there, Rena?
Yes,
Okay. I don't know that.
they do.
It was very cooperative. It was there
Yeah.
a long time. So the looks we had, we went one way, it was kind of backlit, and then on the reverse, it was full sun, and it wasn't far from us, and you saw all the marks. It was the
And we
best
did
view I
not
had.
carry a scope. So on the way back, we had like it kind of, we followed it in, it was pretty much in the open for quite a while.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome.
it was
What